All right. So number 18. Let's look at this. I want to do one problem from the very bottom, one or two from the very bottom, because that is actually the type we have not talked about. And then probably the last 20 minutes or so, you guys can have that. All right. Number 18. First thing we look for is greatest common factor. What is the GCF on 18? 8. Does 4 go into 54? I don't think so.
No.
I think it's just 2. We just pull a 2 out. That's all we need to do here. So we're going to pull the 2 out. And I'm going to go ahead and write the answer box with the 2 in it. Because basically when you pull that 2 out, you're done with it until you write your final answer. And then we want to factor what's left over. We can't just do straight guess and check. So we got to do crazy jump, slip, slide method. So let's take the last number, the A, and it's going to jump to the C. Is 8 times negative 27. Negative 216?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember from yesterday, there's the little calculator trick. This is definitely one where you want to use that calculator trick. You're looking for 2 numbers that multiply together to you negative 216, that add together to you 30. For the calculator trick from yesterday is if you go to y equals and you type in negative 216 divided by x in y equals, and then you look at the table. Sometimes that's worth more, it's not worth the trouble, but this one. I would use a calculator for this one. Somebody comes up with a combo, let me know.
18, 30, no, 36 and negative 6. Yeah.
36 and 6?
Negative 6.
Negative 6, okay. 36.
Because 18 and 12 doesn't give you negative 216. It has to be 30. Yeah, but when they're multiplied.
So negative 6 times 36 is negative 216. I'm going to assume that 36 minus 6 is definitely 30. So that's the combo that works. If the A in this problem was just 1, we'd be done. But remember, A was 8 in this problem. So we got to slip an 8 underneath. And if the fraction can be reduced, you need to reduce it. The questions first on that step. That's kind of the, it's not a hard step, but you just have to remember that step because we multiplied by 8 before, so now we've got to undo that multiplication with division at the end. So 6 over 8, both those numbers are even, so that reduces to 3 over 4. This is m minus 3 over 4. 36 over 8. Both of those numbers are divisible by 4. So you can divide top and bottom by 4. And that would be 9 over 2. And then the last step is the slide. So remember the number, we can't have fractions in our problem, so the denominator is just going to slip to the front. of the m. Denominator is going to slip to the front of the m, and that's how we write our answer. So m minus 3/4 space becomes 4m minus 3. Make sure you see how we went from one step to the next. And do the same thing for the other one. The other one's going to be 2m plus. Try one on your own, just to make sure we got this. So try 19. And then we'll do that last type of factoring, which is much quicker. Try number 19. No greatest common factor. Yeah.
If you have like a fraction, so if it was like 4/2 and it equaled 2, would you slide anything or would it just be that close?
Just be 2. Yep.
Okay.
We'll
So
just
there wouldn't be
simplify.
anything in front of the variable.
Right. Exactly. And that'll happen a lot. Follow steps. First step, do A times C. Well, first look for greatest common factor. I don't think we have one. And then you're going to do A times C to get that number. I'm going to write the steps on the board. So jump is step 1. And that's where you do A times C. To do A times C, you factor it just like we were factoring all the guess and check problems yesterday, and then you'll do step 2. Step 1 is kind of a long step. You do A times C and you get this, and then you got to rewrite it. Once you factor it, the original A value slips under the factor. And step 3 is your slide. I'll come around and see how you guys are doing with this one. Yep, so far I did reduce those 2 fractions, yes. That'll end up being it, right. Yep, yep. Yep. Yes, yes, that's right, yeah. So is that x minus 2/3, x minus 2/3? You're almost there, so then you just need to do the slide. So the denominator, which is 3 in both cases, is going to slide in the front. You got it. Yep. Is this your answer? No, it's right. What's the 9? Right, yeah. Other than that, 9 is perfect. So far, yep, good so far. And now do guess and check after that. We're going next. So your first step, right, you're going to take 9 and multiply by 4. So that's going to change the problem to x squared minus 12x plus 36. That's where the 36 goes. now factor that using the guess and check method. So think right here, once you do this, you're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give you that, and add together to give you that. Yep, and then just, oh, yep, you already did it. Perfect. Yep. That is good. Uh-huh.
What do I do next here? Like here, you put that, where did the A come from?
It came from the
The
first
A.
number, yeah, so we multiplied the A value, and now we got to divide it at the end. So the 9 needs to slip underneath the 6s. Mhm. All right, so that's the first step. Second step is two numbers to multiply together to give you positive 36. Add together to give you negative 12. In this case, it's negative 6 and negative 6. And then we multiplied by 9. Now we got to undo that. So we got to divide each of those numbers by 9. And 6 over 9 reduces to 2/3. And then the 3 at the bottom just slips to the front. So it's 3x minus 2, 3x minus 2. So that is the weird one, but ultimately these problems can get really, really ugly. And this method works every single time. So in a second, you guys are going to practice a lot of that on your assignment. Questions there? Any on the first 20? All right, real quickly, last thing, look at 21, that last section. So there's no GCF on number 21. So I'm going to actually rewrite this problem as x squared plus 0x minus 4. I'm going to go ahead and just force it to have 3 terms. So there wasn't an x term, so I put in a 0x. Because then when I force it to have 3 terms, I can use guess and check method. The A value is 1, which makes this one fairly easy. And then you're just looking for 2 numbers to multiply together to give you negative 4. And add together to give you 0. 2 numbers would do that. Yeah, 2 and negative 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So positive 2 and minus 2. And that's literally all you do to this problem. You don't have to slide anything underneath because the A value for this problem is 1.
You're just plugging in 0?
Yes. However, there's even a quicker way to do it because you'll notice some of these have weird looking variables to them. So plugging in the 0 can be a little tricky when you have a bunch of weird variables. So what we're going to use is the difference of squares method. Got the title right there. So anytime you have a difference of perfect squares, your 2 factors are going to be, anybody remember what these 2 factors are called, where they're exactly the same, but one's positive, one's negative? Starts with C? With the conjugate?
I'm going to.
Conjugate, perfect, yeah. So difference of squares, I don't have enough room to put it there. So the difference of two perfect squares method is actually super easy if you recognize it is a difference of two perfect squares. And this one's pretty easy to see because 4 is a perfect square, because 2 times 2 is 4, and x squared is a perfect square because x times x is x squared. So if you have a difference of perfect squares, so let's just take a squared minus b squared. This is a general problem. The format of the answer is you take the square root of the first term and the last term, and you write your answers as conjugate factors. We'll write your factors as conjugates. And I'll show you how easy this is on a more complicated looking problem. But you can see here, the square root of 4 is 2, so 2 goes here, 2 goes there. The square root of x squared is x, so x goes here and x goes here. They're opposites because there's a 0 in the middle on all of these problems. So they always have to be opposites. So if we take that method to a harder looking problem like, I don't know, 24, that is a difference of perfect squares because if you take the square root of m squared n squared, what's the square root of m squared n squared? Just mn. And here's one thing to watch out for. You're taking the square root of the positive number. So even though you see the minus 49, we're actually taking the square root of positive 49. No i's today. Square root of 49 is 7. So your two factors will be conjugates made up of these terms. So mn plus 7, mn minus 7. There's a bunch of stuff has to cancel since this problem only has 2 single terms. So I'll pick one more real quick. It's got a GCF before we do perfect squares, but questions there in 21 and 24. Really easy once you recognize it's perfect squares. But the hard part is recognize it's difference of perfect squares. Has to be subtraction problem.
So what do you do if the exponents are different, like different numbers?
Like 25? Okay. So first off on 25, obviously 72 is not a perfect square. So, but we notice there's a GCF in this problem too. That takes care of that. Now think back to your rules of exponents when you do this. So what is x squared times x squared? X to the 4th. So that means the square root of x to the 4th is x squared. What's x to the 3rd times x to the 3rd? 6, right? Because when we multiply, we add exponents. So that means when we take the square root of x to the 6th, it will just be x to the 3rd. Because x to the 3rd times itself gives you x to the 6th. In other words, when you take the square root of something with an exponent, you just cut it in half. So like the square root of x to the 10th is x to the 5th. Because when you multiply variables, you add their exponents. So this problem, when we take the square root of the first term, which is 36 r to the 6th, that ends up being 6 r to the 3rd. And when you take the square root of s squared, that ends up being s. So your factors are 6r3rd plus s and 6r3rd minus, yes. Also that 2 that we factored out. All right. You guys have a lot more time than a second to get your homework done. It's only the odds on there. So there's 10 problems. It's on Schoology. You can either do it on Candy or you can do it on a separate sheet of paper. It's up to you, but you'll need to pull it up on the computer to see the problems regardless. If you got questions on any of this, please let me know.
Are you supposed to finish this sheet?
No, this was just notes and practice together. Monday, we're gonna kind of review this one more time and review graphing, and then that's when we'll take our quiz towards the end of class on Monday.
Can you release it?
Release it?
No, it's not.
Should be in the Friday folder.
No, oh, I thought it was
Yeah.
on the HRW.
There's no my HRWs for this thing for some reason. The answer key is obviously attached. It's not something that I'm not aware of, so just make sure we're using that as a checking device. Zoom people, people that are on the Zoom, submit those on Schoology if you can. It actually goes for everybody. If you know how to submit that assignment on Schoology, especially if you're just writing your answers. If you're just writing your answers in Candy, then that's no issue at all.
Or we just do it on paper. So.
If you're doing it on paper, if you know how to take a picture and attach that on the Schoology,
We just email.
that would be the best. Don't do email, but there should be a way where you can just attach it right on that assignment. Yeah. And that's generally for FYI, if some of you don't make it to Monday in person.
When is it due?
It's due Monday, yeah. And in the videos, people that may be going on Zoom next week, the videos will be up there every day, what we talk about in class, so. Get stuck, let me know. That's all we got. Matt, what color was your calculator?
It was,
One of those skinny ones, like a newer model. Keep a lookout for it. Has anybody got a stylus yet? I don't know how well they work with these computer screens. A couple of you. They work pretty well? Yeah. So it's not like pen and paper, obviously.
Yeah, it's not like accurate, like 100%, but it does help.
Somebody asked about our next test. Our next test is still probably a couple of weeks away, so you've got to be able to factor pretty much everything else we do until 2021. So yeah, as soon as we make it to 2021. Sam? Mr. Jones needs to see you. I don't know if you need your stuff. You could probably come back. I don't know.
It's probably for Paul.
It's actually Miss G, I think it's Miss, but she's in Mr. Jones' room.
Oh.
Okay. Not this one.
Oh, nothing, mine.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Go to Fridays. I think it was originally Thursday, but I think it's a Friday. Yeah, there we go. I was wondering why you're pulling out this stuff. So, you're good.
It's just a bit.
You definitely could, pull out the GCF there first, yeah. But then I'm guessing you're probably gonna do A times C method after that as well. But what is the GCF? Yeah, just a B. So it's gonna take it, when you factor out that B, it's gonna change that to a B squared, regular B, no B.
But, yeah. But yeah, one of them just produces, right? The other one, you'll have to slide it back in front. It's, so what number do you have, 140?
Yeah.
So type in 140 divided by X. And look at the table. See all the fancy numbers. Yeah. Pretty handy with the generalist numbers.
On the keyboard.
Shift 6.
If there's not a C and you're like shifting, so you multiply the C by it, would you multiply it by 0 or would you multiply it by a B?
Well, if there's no C, you couldn't do A times C method at all, really. This would just be straight up either GCF or perfect squares on this one, since there's no C.
What do you want?
What number is that? No,
6.
6. Oh, we're just doing the odds.
I was about to say, I don't know
Yeah.
which one you're on.
And I will say, now, you don't have to do 6, but 6 is one of the most missed questions, because 6 is just greatest common factor. There's nothing else to do to that one. Yeah, 8 times C only works if you have 3 terms. If there's not 3 terms, if there's 2 terms, it's either GCF, perfect squares, or it's prime. I don't know if you have any that are prime on this.